Thank you for showing into the Pot of Gold podcast, where we talk about real estate investing, financing, and wealth generation. Today on the show, we have Zack Busch, and he has got extensive experience in wholesaling in real estate. At some point, he decided that he wanted to get away from that and become a property owner himself. And so we've decided to bring him onto the show today so we can kind of learn a little bit about his story and if he has any advice for people who are just trying to get started. How are you doing today, Zack?
Good. How are you? Appreciate you having me on.
Oh, yeah, sure thing. I'm doing great. Definitely glad to have you here. So I guess what we're all wondering is what drove you to get into real estate? What prompted that interest, and what was your journey like?
Yeah. So in addition to real estate, I also work as a W-2. I know we were talking before that you do that as well. So this is perfect. I can kind of give my experience from that aspect. So I'm a W-2 employee. I work as a mechanical engineer. Went to Drexel University in Philadelphia. I live outside of Philly. And we do a lot of design work for pharma, construction drawings, research labs, all that. So that's been a great experience, and I've learned a ton through that. But probably 5 years ago at this point, I was starting to kind of, I wouldn't say have like a quarter life crisis, but kind of just figuring out, is this something that I want to do for the next 30, 40 years, right? Great company. The work is good. It's different. It's engaging. So like the brain is definitely working through that. But go to work at 8 and leave at 4 and behind the desk all day was just becoming kind of monotonous. Again, good money, stable job, good company, but what can I do to give myself another option? Not just stuck behind this job and single source of income. So I stumbled across financial independence, retire early, the FIRE movement, specifically the subreddit. I was scrolling on Reddit anyway, for whatever reason, it popped up on my feed. And I was like, okay, this sounds cool. Like, let me dive into this. And what that essentially is the financial independence, retire early, is their focus is, all right, how can we cut all unnecessary expenses and increase our savings, increase our investing into mutual funds, index funds, retirement, HSA, like utilize all of the tax advantaged accounts and use the growth of those at exponential compounding interest to retire earlier, right? And depending on your level of income, how much you're willing to sacrifice and how much you're willing to save will determine at what point you could live off the dividends and the growth through that. So it was really great, like awesome. That means I don't necessarily have to work for 30 or 40 years. Maybe it's 10 or 15 or 20. So it cuts down the time, but also requires me to sacrifice a ton, which I'm willing to make sacrifices, but nothing is guaranteed that I'll be here next month, next year, all that. Obviously, you want to actively, and that you will be, but it's not worth sacrificing absolutely everything, all of my expenses, all my vacations, all of it for that possibility. So
no sense in eating nothing but rice and beans and losing a bunch of weight and being miserable if you're going to die in 3 weeks, right?
Right. And you don't know. Sure. And, you're still counting, a lot of it's investing in stocks and mutual funds and all that. So you're counting on that always going up, as 2008 happened, stuff like that does happen. So that's not guaranteed either. I mean, nothing's guaranteed, but it's like, what it did was open up my mind to, there's more out there. There's other options than to just stick with kind of the blueprint that most people go through. Again, not that there's anything wrong with that, but you have more options than to, go to school, get a job, work there, and then retire at 60, 65, whatever that looks like.
No, I get where you're coming from. It's funny you mentioned a quarter life crisis. I had a little bit of that when I realized that I was older than every single dog in the entire world. One of those silly things. Mm-hmm. But no, nothing much came out of it from that, other than it was like, oh, if I live to be 100, I'm a quarter of the way done. I got to figure out what I'm doing with my life, kind of a thing. So
yeah, and I didn't want to have it like all figured out. It just, it was becoming like, when you're at school, especially like college, like you have time off. There's, at certain classes, different times. That switches up every, quarter, 3 months. So you're getting variability through that, and even through high school. So you're still seeing the changes. You're, kind of figuring stuff out as you go through from 18 to 22. But kind of after a few years at work, I was like, it kind of dawned on me, like, this is gonna be what the rest of my life looks like. And again, not that it's bad, but it didn't sit well with me. So that's when I accidentally came across it, but was like, once I took that, whatever it is, the red pill in the Matrix, where it's like you can see the truth or you can kind of just be naive to it. Once I kind of saw that, there was no going back. And now it's like, okay, what can I do to change my future? How can I develop the future that I want? And that's what that FIRE community made me realize, and what ultimately made me go into real estate, or realize that real estate is an avenue that I can go that will speed up that process even more, from like, hey, let's just save everything and invest. Like, let's invest in specific things that will help not only long-term wealth, but help like that money now come in sooner.
I like that. I've heard the phrase that brain once expanded can never return to its original shape.
Yeah, it's like a paper crumpled up can't be like perfect again, right? Like, it's not.
Yeah, it's an interesting phenomena. And I've actually experienced it myself, because once you get to a certain point or a certain understanding, there are moments in your life or decisions you make that are one directional. You don't go back from those things. And I think everyone experiences that to an extent, because everyone has this scenario, it's different for everybody, where they lose their innocence. And there's no getting that back once it's lost. But it's also, once you gain understanding of certain things, you can't go back to being unaware of what those things are.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened to me, when it was like, okay, there are other options, and then executing and moving forward on those options and making those options work are another story. But at least it's like, okay, I've changed the perspective, I've changed the mindset, I know what's out there. Now, what's the next step? What can I do to get moving on that? And that's where real estate happened.
Okay, so you went from mechanical engineering and you learned about FIRE, and you started getting into there to reduce the time it's going to take for you to retire. Where does real estate enter?
Yeah, so going through the FIRE stuff, I realized that I stumbled across real estate. Bigger Pockets was like the biggest thing that came through there, that kept popping up every once in a while. I was like, real estate, Bigger Pockets. So I was like, let me check that out, see what that's all about. I had owned my own home at that point, so I was at least had bought something, understood real estate, know that there's potential in real estate, but always figured you need a ton of money to do it, or you need to like have a rich family member that will pay for it for you, or whatever that looks like. So that limiting mindset of like, oh, this isn't possible because of my current circumstances. And so when I started listening to Bigger Pockets and all the different options there are out there, there's wholesaling, there's flipping, there's private money, there's hard money loans. So you can go into these things without having to have hundreds of thousands of dollars. And stumbled across one of the podcasts was Pace Morby and his creative finance and the sub 2 community, which is just different ways to purchase property, taking over people's mortgage, or like seller financing it. Somebody who owns a property free and clear wants to be done with it. They become the bank and you pay them certain payments, right? Can be super advantaged because maybe they don't require the 20 or 25% down that a traditional lender would for an investment property. So you can get into the property for a lower amount. You can work with the payments with the seller, right? Whereas a bank, you're stuck to the interest rate, you're stuck to the loan amount. They tell you how much you owe them. Whereas the seller, they maybe only want $1,000 a month for 30 years. Okay, cool. Like this property rents for $2,500. That's a great spread. So there's advantages of that. And so that's what like kind of piqued my interest. Like, okay, there is other options in real estate. Just like I realized there's other options than to just work this W-2 for the next 40 years. How can I make things work in real estate without having a ton of money, right? Had some savings, was doing the FIRE thing. So there was money being in my account, but how can I utilize that? And so that's where the creative finance portion came in, and where sub 2 came in, and me joining that community. I'd been looking at real estate before that for 6 months, a year, just listening, learning, podcasts, books. So learned a lot. And then when I finally saw that, I was like, okay, this is a community that I can join, that when I do run into problems and don't know what I'm doing, because I don't know what I'm doing about real estate, I haven't actually done anything, I feel comfortable joining this. Let's join it and see where things go from there.
You can ask questions. One of the things you mentioned was the seller financing and how it benefits the buyer, but I've also found that it's really cool for sellers, because if they're selling up a seller finance note with you, then they don't have to worry as much about the capital gains tax, because they're getting paid over time instead of in a huge lump sum.
100%. Yeah. And the 10, like maybe they been self-managing it, right? And they don't want to deal with tenants anymore, but they're used to that monthly income coming in. And maybe it's not as much as the tenant is paying them, but who wouldn't take, $1,000 or $500 a month for doing nothing, right? You don't
Yeah.
have to worry about the house, the maintenance, the tenants, or anything. So that's another advantage for the seller as well.
Very cool. So we go from bigger pockets and learning about things to joining the Sub2 community. And the reason you did that is because you realize that it is a community, and the value in that is that there are other people that are doing the exact same thing that you want to do, and they can be a resource for you to ask questions when things come up that you aren't aware of how to solve.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, and then by my understanding, this is where you start getting into wholesaling, right?
Yeah, so I joined the community, and one of the biggest selling points to me at the time, this was 2.5, almost 3 years ago at this point, they had just run, or were just finishing up running, a course. It was live, but when I was going to be joining, it was already completed, that basically teaches you how to build a wholesaling company from nothing at 3 hours of work a day, like at most. And being a W-2, I was like, that's perfect. I can get up a little bit early before work. I can do stuff after work. Like I can find 3 hours in the day to make that happen. So it was super appealing, and I didn't know what I was doing. So let's take a blueprint that somebody has already shown is successful, and let's just follow it with them step by step. So spent time listening to that and kind of building it along with it. So that main selling point, I just kind of jumped right into it and started to figure out what works, what doesn't work, what I'm good at, what I'm not good at, but just kind of going through it, right? Pulling lists, to talking to sellers, to training a virtual assistant, and doing comping and underwriting, doing all of those things that come with owning property. But with the wholesaling portion, you don't actually have to own it, which is nice. It's very transactional. So that's what kind of got me into Sub2 and got me going on the wholesaling part. Was let's just follow this course and see where it takes me.
Very cool. So you were kind of doing this all on your own, or were you working with a partner? You mentioned a VA and training a VA.
Yeah, it was just me doing it. So I was pulling all the lists, I was doing all the training, but I was just following kind of their structure on how they did it. So they
Still wearing all the hats then, huh?
Yeah, exactly, doing everything on my own, and spending at least the 3 hours a day. And some days it was more, just because I was learning a new system and I didn't get as much done. But yeah, doing absolutely everything in the business.
Well, there's a lot of utility in that. I know it's not exactly the funnest way to build a business, but you learn so much as you're trying to make things work. One of the things that I was concerned about, like after a year of being in the thing, I didn't make a lot of money, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I come from zero experience whatsoever. And I look back on all the things that I'd learned over the course of that year, and I realized how much personal growth and skill development that I had acquired. And I was like, okay, the money is not that important at this moment in time. I'm in a period of learning before I get to the period of earning, and I'm actually really happy with the results. So that was a really cool thing to realize once I got to that point.
Yeah, I mean, I know going through it, I learned a ton about real estate, obviously, and all of that, but about myself too. And a lot of times, it's not ideal to be doing everything. Sometimes at stages, especially beginning, there's time to need to do that, especially in a new venture, right? Maybe you're starting a new business or starting real estate, and you're trying to figure out everything, but not even just on the business side, about yourself personally. So you're looking through and going, what are the parts of this business that I enjoy doing? What are the parts that I hate doing? And how can I focus more on what I like to do versus what I hate to do? And I think that's more crucial than what you actually learn in the business, right? Because I might not be in real estate forever. Maybe I get to a point where like I'm ready to move on to something else, but I'll still be able to take the portions about myself that I enjoy doing in real estate and take that over to another business and figure out who can I put in the seats of the things that I hate doing, right? I hated talking to sellers. I understood all the concepts. I read all the scripts. I knew kind of where things were going to go, but I am not a smooth talker when it comes to like wanting to get on the phone and not necessarily just being salesy, but just like really digging in and asking the right questions. And so that's what I learned about myself. So when I go to something else, who can I work with or who can I hire to fill those roles so I can focus on the 1, 2, 3 things that not only do I love doing, that I'm really good at.
No, I really like that. I think we all have those things that we prefer not to do. I know Pace talks about how he doesn't go anywhere near spreadsheets.
Mhm.
And I thought that was amusing because there's a time where I was like obsessed with spreadsheets. So it's like every person's a little different. But the interesting thing about the whole process is, like you said, it's a kind of a journey of self discovery. And I listen to some other podcasts on in my free time on occasion. And one of the quotes that I heard was by Chris Williamson. He does Modern Wisdom, and he was quoting James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits. And they said that entrepreneurship is a self-development vehicle masquerading as a capitalist pursuit.
Mhm.
And I was like, that's it right there. The whole purpose of getting into this is, yes, is to make money, but it's also to test your limits, to see exactly what am I capable of, what am I not capable of, what do I prefer to do, what do I don't, and just kind of it's an adventure, really.
Yeah, for sure. And you don't know until you start doing it. I didn't know what good, I had ideas of what I was good at. Like I like underwriting. Spreadsheets are good. As a mechanical engineer, use them all the time. I'm comfortable with them. So sitting in front of a computer screen and hammering some numbers and doing some comps and, just doing that math, that's what real estate really comes down to. It's less emotion and just like, do the numbers work? If not, I'm passing on it because of this. Or how can I make the numbers work? So I had an idea going into it what I would be interested in and what I would like, but definitely I agree. Going into doing something new in the business, you're going to go through these growing pains and this discomfort and doing things you don't know that you can do or aren't sure or don't like to do. And just because you're good at it doesn't mean you're going to like doing it. Like I can make seller calls, but I just don't like doing it and it's not fun for me. So I'm not going to get the best results out of it. So I love the quote there where it's like, hey, this is self-development. Like I have learned so much about myself, especially in the last year, just trying to figure out, all right, let's learn about the business, let's learn how to do it, but actually having to do it. And I think that's the thing that people need to do and is to start. You don't really know about yourself or the business until you take that first step in taking the action for doing the work.
And it's really a journey of, I don't know if this is going to work or not, so let's try it, and we got to stick with it long enough to see if things will work. And
Yeah.
sometimes people will get better mileage out of certain activities than other ones. Like you said, even if you're good at something, maybe you don't enjoy doing it, but there might be things that you don't really enjoy, well, like you do enjoy doing, that you aren't very good at. And those ones are kind of interesting because all the difference in that is going to be is time and practice, because you can get good at something.
Yeah, it's the 18 minutes a day gets you what 1,000 hours or something like that, and makes you better than
99% of the planet.
Mm-hmm.
That's the statistic. Well, cool. Would you have any recommendations? Like, did you go through any kinds of hardships as you're trying to set up your wholesale business, or pitfalls that maybe people could avoid by learning what you did or didn't do?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is, and it's funny because I joined Sub too because I wanted to have a community around me for when I created problems, but I didn't take time to build relationships in that community and intentional relationships with people who are wholesaling or in the wholesaling business. And I wish I had done that. I recommend doing that. Find somebody who's doing what you want to be doing, that are a couple of steps ahead of you, and talk to them, right? Learn about what they're doing, how they're doing it, right? And I think it's intimidating. I didn't do it because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Why would somebody who is probably super busy with more experience want to talk to me? And I've found that it's reaching out to them and like learning about what they're doing, what their sticking points are, and seeing how you can help resolve that. And you'll learn a ton of information with how they've built it, what they're currently doing, and what their problems are. And by building those relationships, would have been able to probably create better partnerships or be able to work with other people to not have to do all of the things that I want to do or didn't want to do at the time. So just building those initial relationships, getting the right rooms, finding the people that are doing whatever you aspire to do, whether that is wholesaling or buying or starting a business or buying a business, whatever that is just find like-minded people, who are ahead of you, reach out to them, build relationships with them, see how you can help them get what they want. And then ultimately that'll lead to you getting what you want.
Awesome. I think that's excellent advice because, well, everyone wants something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone has problems in their life. And I think the best way to make a win-win situation for everybody is to find their problems, so the things that they're working on, like you're saying, and see if you can't find resolutions. And maybe your skill set is going to be able to complement the things that they're having trouble with.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you'll find that, and it might not be the first conversation, it might not be the 10th conversation, but just having the conversations and trying to be intentional about it. Like I said, finding somebody who does what you're wanting to do or has something that you might need will be super important, because otherwise you can potentially waste a ton of time just trying to talk to anybody and everybody for the sake of talking to them.
Okay, well, what do you mean by that? Would you expound on that a little bit more?
Yeah, so I mean, if I'm going to, like, sometimes a lot of people, reach out asking to have a conversation. It's like, okay, cool. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Like, what are you working on right now? And so I'm currently, like, I shut down the wholesaling thing. We can go into that later if you want, but I've shifted to buying single families, creative, and then cash in a couple areas. So that's my focus right now. If I have somebody reaching out to me, I love helping people, but I'll ask them, what are you currently working on, or what are you needing? Not as like, hey, what do you need, like, kind of thing, but like, what's your struggle? Like, how can I, trying to determine what can I do, what value can I provide to you? And this is a conversation that will help both of us. And so if they're reaching out to me and saying, I have a 100-unit apartment complex, I need underwriting, well, I can help with that. It's not what I'm currently focused on. So building that connection, I can refer them to somebody. That would be like how I want to do it, because I do want to help them. But hopping on a half-hour call to walk through this property, especially depending on what stage of the negotiation it's on, I've done it where it's like, hey, just had this come across my desk, let's take a quick call, and they haven't even really talked to the seller or like worked out the terms or anything. So just making sure that you're focused on the right things. Now, if it's a wholesaler who's got a bunch of properties that are creative in a certain area, great. Like, let's hop on a call. Like, we can definitely help each other. I can get you your assignment fee. I can get a property out of that. Like, those are the intentional conversations that I want to have, right? I'm looking for, long-term funding, private money lenders who want to lend for 12 to 24 months. If it's somebody who's like, hey, I'm just looking for EMD, maybe we're not the right fit right now. And that's fine. Here's a couple of people I know who are looking for EMDs. Here's how I can help you, but right at the moment, that's not what I need. So just trying to figure out, what do I need and how can I help somebody? How can I refer them if I don't want to have that conversation? Or how can we have that conversation and be intentional with what we're going to accomplish during the 30-minute call?
Awesome. So what I'm hearing is the person that wants to reach out to these people really should have what they're aiming at dialed in first. And that way they can determine if the person they're reaching out to is going to be of aid in achieving their goals, and maybe being able to analyze your own skills and gifts, and being able to know, hey, I might be able to help the person that I'm contacting in a reciprocal kind of an exchange.
Exactly. Yeah. So like when I'm reaching out to somebody, it's like, hey, hey, how's it going? Like, always start with something that, like, people are just, like, I get so many Facebook messages where they're probably just spammers or like random. It's just like, hey, and then, like, that's it. Like, there's no anything else. Like, and that's all. So like, I probably won't answer that. But when I'm reaching out to people, it's like, hey, how's it going? If I'm Zach, whatever, this is, what I'm working on. What do you have going on? Or this is what I'm needing. Like, hey, what do I have? What do I need? What are you working on? What's your bottlenecks? What's your problems? And then starting a conversation that way. Like, I would rather have that. I'm going to answer that more often than like the simple, hey, or hey, how's it going? Like, hey, what's going on? Like, what do you need?
That's a good pointer, because a lot of people might not know exactly the thing to say to get interaction from people that they want to talk to. I mean, This is all about personal development, and a lot of us don't have a very good social skills starting out.
Yeah, and if you're not sure what you need or what you have, like, I'm going to answer too, more than likely, is, and I try to do this as well, like, if you're DMing me through Instagram or Facebook, like, take a quick scroll through what you're going, like, right? If I'm going to reach out to you, I'm going to go through your Instagram and see what pictures you have. Like, did you go for a run? Did you have a barbecue? Do you smoke meats, like whatever, like see what can I do? Like, hey, how's it going? I saw that you have an awesome looking dog. Like, what's his name? Like, just if you don't have anything like that specific of what you know, start it with a personalized thing. Then at least it shows that you take time to look into the person and be interested in the person. And that's the approach I take. It's like, hey, I don't know exactly what you do or what we can do together, but let me start with something personalized that usually ends up working.
Awesome. I think that's excellent. So going into your shift from wholesaling to buy and holding, maybe you can expand on that. What kind of properties you're looking for? What's your buy box for your market you're looking for? Maybe there's people in the audience that would be able to bring properties like this to you in exchange for an assignment fee, and you can help each other out.
Yeah, so I went through Jesse Stanton's Growth Co. It's business coaching course specifically geared towards real estate investors who are looking to go from wholesaling to real estate. Now, when I started that, I was in wholesaling. I was going into that to learn how to build the social media and the mindset on like building out a business to hire people to build the wholesaling business, right? So it was like a 10-week course. I went through 8.5 weeks of it, being like, I'm going to build this wholesaling business up. I'm going to build it up. I'm going to build it up. So at some point, the very end, for whatever reason, because I'm sure he had said it 5 or 6 times before then, like he asked the question, why did you get into real estate? And it's like, I want to build long-term wealth. I want to build, passive income, the main things people get into real estate for. And he's like, so why are you wholesaling then? And like, for whatever reason, that hit me, was like, oh, well, I don't really know. I just, it was the A to Z thing, and I just started it and just didn't want to give up on it.
I was like a dog with a bone.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I started that transition towards the beginning of this year, kind of worked on closing down the wholesale business and, continuing to follow up with any good leads that I had at that point, and switched to, okay, how can we make this buy and hold business work? And so, looking for creative deals, nationwide, but a lot of the markets that I'm primarily looking in are Texas, Florida, the Carolinas, and then I'm also not just looking for creative deals, but cash deals in the Philadelphia area, outside of the city specifically, and then in Columbus, Ohio. Those are a couple places I'm looking at to burr the property, right? So buy, renovate it, get it rented out, refinance it, and then use that money to buy the next one. So that's what I did for my most recent property. Looking to expand on that, and add the creative in there as another avenue to get leads.
The acquisition avenue.
Yep.
Cool. Well, then where exactly can people go to bring you deals so that you can look at those and then maybe get them an assignment fee?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, so my handles on the screen here, Zack Busch 924. You can DM me on Instagram. You can search me on Facebook, Zack Busch, and it's Busch, B-U-S-C-H, like the beer, not like the president. So just to make sure you're looking for the right person. I went to high school with a guy whose name was Zack Busch, B-U-S-H, and he was a couple years older than me. So it got super confusing. But yeah, Instagram, Facebook, you can message me through there, and then send me over what you got, and always happy to jump on a call and send a Calendly and see how we can work together.
Very cool. No, it's funny that you say that. When I was in school, there was like 6 or 7 other Nathans. So I go by Nathaniel because I wanted to be distinct from all 6 or 7 of the other ones, so.
Yeah, and now you're in the Growth Co., who another graduate, a good friend of mine, Nathaniel Hovsipian, he's like, you guys spell it differently, but yeah, you guys have the same thing where it's like, all right, it's Nathaniel.
Yeah, he was actually on the show last week.
Yeah. Oh, it was.
I got to interview him last week, so it was good.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm going to be releasing that episode on, let's see. I don't think I've released it yet. No, I released it on the 3rd, and it's Dan Grove that comes out on the 10th.
Gotcha. Yep, Dan's another good friend. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I just kind of remind people that this is the Pot of Gold podcast. We talk about finances, wealth generation, and real estate investing. And remember to follow and subscribe. We'd love to be able to hear from you guys, provide value, and answer questions. Okay, so that's kind of what your thing looks like with buy and holds and how you're going to be building up things for your portfolio. I imagine the end goal for that is kind of similar to why you got into FIRE, where you're trying to learn how to retire sooner or generate long-term wealth. Yeah, about the same for everybody, right? That's kind of how this thing goes.
Yep.
But before we get off the episode here today, I was just kind of curious, do you have any suggestions or recommendations for people who are just getting started, maybe resources that they could look into or people they could connect with?
Yeah. So on the real estate side, I mean, Bigger Pockets is a great resource. Their podcast is amazing. I know they made some changes with guests or the hosts and how that is structured, but that's a great resource. Anything, you know, Brandon Turner, David Green, those old Bigger Pockets guys, they're really good. Brandon Turner has a podcast called the Better Life Tribe podcast, which is really good. He brings on mostly real estate investors, but, you know, business owners and things like that to kind of learn about their past, what got them to where they are, you know, kind of similar where it's like, hey, what advice would you give to yourself to make things a little bit easier? So that's a great podcast. And then book wise, I mean, you know, Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell is a great book on how to, you know, structure things, not even just business wise, but like how can you save yourself time? How can you focus on the things that give you your time back essentially? So that's a really good one. And yeah, I think those are the main couple of things. Like podcasts are great to just listen to.
Awesome. Well, Zach, thank you so much for being on the show. Definitely a pleasure talking to you today. Just remind everybody that this is the Pot of Gold podcast, where we talk about finances, wealth generation, and real estate investing. And thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you.